Hearty good evening to you from me, Brian Eminis, and my producer, Chris Rothman. We are getting ready now for episode 2 of Let's Get Airborne. This is a program that I'm sure you are going to enjoy all the way. This evening, we have none other than Major Johann Venter, who will be talking about his flying career. And what a great career. Well, Johann, I must say, it really is an absolute pleasure to have you in the lockdown studio. You, of course, are at your home. I'm in central South Africa, and our director is in Pretoria. Let's immediately start off with, how did you get interested in flying?
Well, at school, I saw the Impala when the South Africa bought them, and I said to my dad, that's what I want to do one day. Not knowing anything about flying. So I was not very wise about flying in my young days. I never built models.
You were born in Durban, you built models, and I think it was around 1971, you joined the South African Air Force. Where did you go to?
That's correct. We did our selections, we went to the military academy for 6 months, did our officers course, and then we went straight to Langebaan. The course was divided in two. Half of the guys went to Donato and Harvards, and the other half went to Langebaan and straight on to Impalas.
Gosh, so you were at the flying training school at Langebaanweg, and you must have really met up with some incredible people while you were there.
Yes, you know, Chris Prince was the OC of the base, and he was the leader of the Silver Falcons. And Attie van Skalkwyk was the CI, and Speedy Levet, I think, was the CF. No, sorry, yeah, he was a CFI.
So you were there, you learned to fly the Impala, and was that a difficult aircraft to learn to fly on?
No, not. For us, it was difficult initially because we know better. But looking back, it was an easy aircraft to fly compared to later on when I went to Harvard's. So I knew what my buddies were up.
So, Johann, you earned the nickname Geronky. Where did that come from? Was it from the days at FTS, or was that later on in your life?
It was later when I did the instructor's course.
We'll chat about what Geronky stands for. Okay, so we've now got you well-trained flying in Impalas. Where did you go from there?
From there, myself and Pierre du Plessis and Chris Rademan and Clive Turner and Neil Ebbard went to Petersburg 85 Combat Flying School, and we did an operational training course on Impalas there for 6 months. And then from there, we were moved just next door to one squadron, which had Impalas and Sabres. The Sabres were grounded at that stage. We were only there for 3 months when we got a Friday afternoon posting to Donato, myself, and Chris and Clive. We suddenly become instructors as second lieutenants. It was a devastating blow to us anyway, but we went. It's probably the best thing it ever for us.
You went to Donato, and you were now training pupils to fly the Harvard.
Yes, well, initially we did the conversion because we'd never flown Harvards before. And one of the guys on the course was Monster Wilkins. He was our course leader. And when they were old captains, and we were second lieutenant, 1 pip, and they had 3 pips, and they were all green and old, and it was something new to us.
Okay, so any well-known names that you were instructor for?
Well, my first student was Kobus Turin, and he also went, became OCF2 squadron, went to SAA, also retired now, so it's my students are already retiring, and he was on YouTube last night.
So you've really had some big names that you trained. When you were finished with your tour at Donato, where did you go to from there?
We were transferred to Langebaan until from mid-75 till end of 77, and then I left, myself and Chris Rademan. We went to Petersburg, and we actually did a PAI course. And then from there, I went to Mirage course. He left and he went to SAA.
PAI being pilot attack instructor.
That's correct.
Okay, so now we've got Johann Venter, fully trained pilot attack instructor, and you were flying, no doubt, it must have been the Mirage 3, the dual, and probably onto the single as well.
Yes, we flew the Mirage, a D2 and a DZ and the Mirage EZ. And whilst we were on course, that whole 50-ship Mirage came up. And we as members of the course was part of that.
That must have been incredible.
Oh, that was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, you know, to move 50 aircraft around, 50 fast jets that are thirsty, you haven't got time to loiter, you've got to know what you're doing.
That's correct.
And tell me, who led that formation?
I can't remember who the leader was. I think it was Ollie Holmes. I'm not sure.
Oh,
I was
okay.
At that stage in the Mirage line to know everybody.
So once you'd now completed, you'd done your flying on the Mirage, did you then go to an operational squadron for Mirage?
Yes, that was at the stage where Hoedspruit was just completed, and we were transferred to 2 Squadron. And 2 Squadron, we actually flew the aircraft from Waterkloof to Hoedspruit, and we were the first occupiers of the base from a pilot point of view. It was a brand new.
You had 1 squadron sitting there with the F1AZs. They were on the top.
No, not yet. No, the Mirage, 2 Squadron with the Mirage 3s were the first people to move into Hoedspruit. 1 Squadron only came up 2 years later.
And so it was then, because I think Dick Lord, he brought the F1As.
Yes. But that was about 2 years later.
And then later on, you had 31 Squadron that also joined with the helicopters.
They also joined the base there as well.
So flying out of Hoedspruit, where did you move to from there?
I moved back to Petersburg, and that is where Renier Keaton started discussing the upgrade of the Mirage 3 fleet. Well, I then left the squadron and went to 85 Combat Flying School, where they had the Impala flight and the Mirage flight. So I went to Impala flight initially, but still flying Mirage 3 EZs on the sideline, whilst I was still flying Impalas again.
So Renier Keat was now busy with the initial, the idea, and then of course the engineers. We spoke to Kribis de Villiers, the top engineer. They were the guys now coming into the picture to get the designs and how this aircraft would be changed into the so-called Cheetah.
That's correct.
Now, if we move on a bit and we move towards the Cheetah, I recall being flown up at great speed to Louis Trichardt, now Mikado, to do the official day 1 of the Cheetah. And the man that they had chosen to fly for absolutely everybody, I couldn't believe, who my audience would be, was of course you. And there you were in a brand spanking Cheetah E. We'd never seen the aircraft before. And you had all these HEVs, that must have been incredible.
That was an awesome experience. I was actually at 89 Combat Flying School, and Renier asked me to do the demonstration, or the first display. And I stayed on till for 3 years, giving all the displays on behalf of 5 Squadron on the Cheetah E. It was a lovely airplane to fly.
I recall going back to Louis Trichardt at a later stage, and we had one Cheetah E that was painted gold. And I think it was for the birthday celebrations of 5 Squadron at the time.
Yes, but I wasn't there at that stage. Okay. I was just doing
you weren't at the function when that great big cake fell on the floor.
No.
Oh, you missed something there. So you'd flown the Cheetah E, and then you went back to go and fly the Cheetah D. And I gather you must have flown some shows or done quite a bit of training for shows on the Cheetah D as well.
Yes, I was simultaneously at 89 and doing the displays for 5 Squadron, but I made mainly training on the Cheetah D up till end of 89.
At the end of 89, you were then probably posted, if I think back, because I was working closely with you, to 3 Squadron.
That's correct.
Now, Johann, now we're talking an absolute dream machine. You land, 3 Squadron was at Waterkloof. You had those fast, I just can't think of the word now, but I know we had those high-speed Skanza, where the readiness platforms, where we had aircraft basically on the ready should we need to scramble from any side of the runway at Kloof. It was just a phenomenal aeroplane.
Yes, I must be quite honest. It's probably the nicest aircraft I ever flew. And the funny thing was, the guy who sent me solo was my ex-student, and that was Kobus Terin. And the day he sent me solo, the airfield was actually red. He went up to the tower and he asked him to make it amber so that I can just get airborne. And I was out of there, and that was my first solo.
Can you remember your solo aircraft?
No.
Okay. 3 Squadron had a very, very good history in the Air Force, getting those 2 kills, the aircraft that was shot down by Johan Rankin.
That's correct. A very good history. And it was an awesome squadron. You know, there was a dedicated air combat squadron doing intercepts and air combat. And it was the guys there were very dedicated, and we did a very nice job there. I mean, the history of the squadron is awesome.
I could see that you loved the aircraft. You did quite a few displays in the aircraft, and you also raised a few eyebrows in your day.
Well, I assume so. Not intentionally.
Not intentionally. I do recall standing on an embankment, listening to you. You always used that call sign Wildcat, and you called Petersburg Tower after that incredible air show. We had Buccaneers, Canberras, the who's who was there. Standing right next to me was General van der Lith and Bart Hauptfleisch, the OC of Petersburg. And the tower gave you your clearance, which you understood. You got airborne, and you decided, now is the hour to show them what Geronky is all about. And you did this incredible, I don't know, I'd call it a Petersburg remembrance departure, because you flew out of there solo. Can you remember that departure?
Well, it was all planned because Louis du Plessis was giving the show, and after his upward Charlie, he came from behind. So after he came from behind, and you know, this old script mark maneuver, and the people are looking up at him, I came from the front. And nobody expected that.
No, they didn't. And
totally planned.
And a lot of people bowed to you on the ground. That was very good. We thought it was absolutely brilliant. It was really sort of making name. You whizzed back to Pretoria, and I recall on Monday morning I was flown to Denotta to come and do a recce at Denotta. Johann du Plessis flew me. And when I got there, walking around with a clipboard in hand was you. And I still was very surprised. And then you said to me, somebody didn't like your departure.
No, not at all. And I got given a board of inquiry for a wheels up in Harvard.
Okay, but you took it in your stride.
Yes, no problem.
If we look at some of the other memorable occasions that I could think of, the fun times with that Mirage, there was a day when you called me and said, look, we are going to be doing a TAC nav. I think that's what you'd call it. And we're going to be flying to Bloemfontein. Would you like to see a few lovely aeroplanes? And I said, why not? And of course, when I looked again, you came screaming past, and you brought the whole squadron, 9 aeroplanes, which was brilliant. They flew in their tactical navigational formation. But then there was one fella that wasn't one of us. I think he came from Taiwan. And
That's
friend
correct.
Andre landed himself into a little bit of a sticky situation. Maybe you can tell us what happened there.
Well, we never allowed him to fly on his own on in a navigation exercise where there's somewhere is a chase plane. And in this case, going to Bloemfontein, he'd been on the squadron for quite a while. So we thought, no, well, he's fine now. And we let him on his own. And he got lost. And fortunately, he went over your place and you could tell us that he's just gone over your place if we could find him.
Yeah, I said I could see the color of his eyeballs. But the worst part is when you told him, because I was monitoring you, when you told him to pull up, he pulled up hard, and he then ended up, lucky for him, straight over the De Wet bombing range.
That's correct.
And there were some very anxious moments as you were doing, what could I say, a little bit of FAC from the F1CZ.
Yes, correct. That's correct.
Yeah, and another memorable occasion, which I know today enjoyed a lot of debate on certain Facebook sites, is, of course, speed of these aircraft. You and Charles were tasked, you were bringing down the, I would take it you brought the static plane. Charles obviously had the display plane, but you had to fly from Waterkloof to Durban. And you two guys cleaned up. Give us a little bit on that story.
Well, we took I had the aircraft with the missiles on, and Charles had the clean aircraft. And we decided there was a time set before by, I think it was an AZ, and we decided we take a shot at it. And we got airborne out of Waterkloof, climbed up to above 35,000 feet, went supersonic, and Charles just left me standing. And he got to Durban way before me. I think it took 17 minutes, 35 seconds. And he arrived in Durban with quite a bang.
Indeed. Now, the bang obviously occurred over the mountains and it rolled down into Durban, but I was already there. And it was pandemonium in Durban because it was still the time of, the problem era that we were living in. And people thought it was one hell of a bomb that had gone off. The next day, the headline, in fact, the late afternoon headlines on the street poles were bomb hits Durban for that huge bang. And it was you and Charles smiling all the way. I remember seeing you that evening in town, and it was quite a laugh.
Yeah, well, I must say I was quite innocent because I didn't break the sound barrier going to Durban because I had no reason to. Charles, I think he slowed down a little bit late and he left over Durban.
Which nobody would really worry too much about. If we look at those displays, the displays you guys flew with the CZ was always very tight. It was just such a powerful maneuverable aircraft.
Yes, I mean, compared to the Cheetah, you can fly a very tight show, but your speed is then also relatively slow, whereas the F1 a lot more power. You can fly tighter, and you can give up a lot better display the capability of the aircraft so much better. I displayed the Cheetah and the F1, and I enjoyed the Cheetah because of certain characteristics, but the F1 was a lot nicer to display. It's nice lines, and you could do a lot more and accelerate a lot more. And yes, I really enjoyed that.
An aeroplane that
to be able to do it.
There was a lot of rivalry between you guys and the AZ guys. AZ guys used to tell me that they would, during the ACM camps, they would lure you chaps out to sea because they could later on make use of air-to-air refueling. You couldn't. So you couldn't go out too far. You'd get bingo and you'd have to go home, and they would win the battle. Is that true, or is that just somebody winding you guys up?
No, that's just somebody winding us up. It never happened. I know the AZ did 100 liters more than us, but it wasn't that much.
Yeah. Let's talk about the photograph showing the white noses. Many people have photographs of F1Cs with the white conical cone. What was that in aid of?
Well, once we got the front sector missile, in other words, the missile you can shoot from the front instead of the back, we decided to implement multi-aircraft combat, 2 versus 3. And if you have 5 F1s all painted blue, they all look the same, and in a fight it becomes very dangerous. So we decided to paint some of the aircraft noses white, and so you can actually distinguish who's a friend and who's foe. That's where the white nose came from.
So we talk about friend and foe. We talk about a photograph showing you standing next to the Mirage with the kill badge on it. But was that you were with Johann Rankin, or was that a plane that he flew?
Now, that was a plane that he flew, which is standing in the museum now. But my name is on it. And the only reason why my name is on it, when the squadron closed down, everybody selected an aircraft and your name got painted on it. And it's only by chance that my name got on that aircraft, and it's now standing at the museum. But I was not in the squadron when that episode took place.
That was
his wingman at the first one, and the other one was Johan du Plessis. He was in the other one. Was his wingman.
So Johan, we move away now from when we closed the squadron down. It was a very sad occasion. I remember I was the presenter. You organized that, and it was an incredible occasion. And Minister Pik Botha was your honorary colonel, still came out
That's
with
right.
the olive branch. And it was very dramatic. Bart Hauptfleisch flew the solo, and then all the guys... Sorry.
Willie Hartog.
Yeah, he was the OC of the squadron. He flew the show.
That's correct.
And then that dramatic shutdown, and everybody, all the aircraft, now being shut down for the last time. Very, very dramatic. If we move on, you left and you were back on Impalas to become a Silver Falcon.
Well, initially it was just they amalgamated, all the Impalas at Hoedspruit and became 85, and the Silver Falcons came with from Longabaan. At that stage, I wasn't part of it yet, but yes, I actually retired my medium service at the end of when it's closing down the squadron. So I actually went to 85 at Hoedspruit as a pensioner, and I was fortunate to actually fly for the Silver Falcons.
Now, just turning the clock back a bit, because I know you were part of it. We don't have to elaborate on it. But the reason I'm bringing this up is it goes about lockdown, and it goes about compromise, because you guys were also, what lockdown is all about. After the tragic Church Street bombing, the Air Force decided to retaliate. And our squadrons we had 4 aircraft from each of the active squadrons, were taken to Hoedspruit. Luckily, there were no mobile phones at the time, but you guys were put into severe isolation. You didn't know the mission. You didn't know where you'd go. And all of a sudden, they said, right, let's go. And the 12 aircraft, led by Steyn Venter at the time, went out, and you went to a neighboring country and you completed the mission. But there were some funny stories there which were told later on. I think you told me, because we were together in this particular country, of as the 4 ships were rolling in, somebody opened rapid fire with those cannons and hit the jam factory.
No, that's correct.
A sticky situation.
Yeah, sticky, but we were locked down at that place as well for a couple of days.
Do you? Yeah, okay. So you don't really have a favorite jam anymore?
No, not at all.
Let's have a look now at your time in the Silver Falcons, because you joined at the right time. When you became a Silver Falcon, we had SAAF 75, the celebration of 75 years. a memorable occasion.
Yes, it was my main reason for taking on the job, because I never liked formation aerobatics. But my son was at that stage in grade 2, and he knew what was going on. So that's a reason why, is to see his dad flying. He hadn't seen me flying Mirage. I mean, at 3 squadrons closing, he was a small son. He was a small boy of 4 years old. Now he was a little bit bigger, and I decided, well, that's a good idea, and I really enjoyed it.
It was a lot of fun because I toured with you guys, met Nelson Mandela at Waterkloof.
That's correct. I got a photograph of him shaking his hand.
Johann, working with the Silver Falcons took you to, well, it took you around the country, but it also took you to Hoedspruit, where you ended up flying with Victor Pugashev in the Sukhoi 30.
That's correct. They were actually based up in Louis Trichardt, so I had to fly across and got briefed there on what to do. And then he sat in the back seat, I sat in the front seat, and I had an hour of sheer joy. My task was to fly against 2 Cheetah Cs, a 1 versus 2, and we had 3 engagements, and they lost all 3. I wiped the floor on 3 occasions. It was unbelievable.
Now, I can recall being at Hoedspruit in the bunker, with the mission controllers actually watching. I'm not sure if it's that particular sortie, but I do remember watching, the Russians and our guys in a dogfight.
Okay.
The Red Arrows, that was an incredible tour. We ended up going down to Cape Town. That was pretty special. And I don't know if you can recall the party that we had, where everybody was at that party, and we had Mark Zanka, one of the Red Arrows, who was upside down. He was doing a handstand, drinking a beer.
That's correct. He downed a beer from standing on his hands.
Yeah, which was like...
I can't believe it.
Yeah. Richie Matthews, who was also, in the team, we got to see him at Farnborough flying the Stealth 117 in later years. So that particular team of Arrows did very well. From the Silver Falcons, we quickly move on to your career as a captain in the airlines. You were with South African Express flying the Dash 8, the Q400, and then you left there to go and fly for Sem Air, training captain, where you still are currently, waiting to see what's going to happen.
Well, I was a training captain at SA Express for I was there for 21 years, where I was a training captain. And I actually retired in February 2018. And then I was recruited by Sem Air. I initially just gave training, and then they just appointed me as a chief pilot, which I still am. And now we're just waiting for the lockdown so we can actually start working again.
Let's quickly talk about that little boy that was 4 years old watching you fly. He is now the official Hawk display pilot for the South African Air Force in current times. And he's also flown the Gripen. So you must be very, very proud.
Yes, I'm a very proud dad. I was very fortunate to fly all these displays in fast jets, Cheetahs, Mirage F1s, full Falcons. I was just fortunate, right place, right time. And I feel honored to do that. And my son was in this whole era, is all he saw. And he worked very hard. And today it's paid off. He's flown the Gripen, and he's now instructor and a PAI on Hawks. And he's now doing the display in the Hawks. And I'm very proud of him.
I watched you when you were standing next to me at Polokwane, and one could see the sheer pride. And I think, if my memory holds correct, there's only 2 dads. I might be wrong, but I'm aware of 2 fathers whose sons fly in the South African Air Force. You and, of course, General Labuschagne.
That's correct.
His son, also flying Gripen and also flying Hawk.
That's correct. Very
Well, Johann,
fortunate.
I must say a very, very big thank you to you. It's been an absolute pleasure. But before I let you go back into isolation, what is the favorite? You said you've flown in the Sukhoi, you've flown the business jets, you've flown the turboprops, you've really been around the block. What is your favorite aircraft?
Well, the F1CZ by far.
F1CZ by far. Thank you. Absolutely wonderful to chat to you, and look forward to catching up with you at the next air show when they decide to have one.
Thank you very much, Brian. It's an honor.
Well, this has been episode 2 of our 3 times a week production, and we really do hope and trust that you've enjoyed this episode as much as both myself and Chris Rothman have enjoyed bringing it to you. So wherever you are, whether you're waking up in Canada or you're getting ready to go to sleep, have a good one. Look after yourself, obey the rules, and one of these days we'll all be back out again and getting ready to do what we enjoy most. From me, Brian Eminis, cheerio.